Allow them 2 minutes to speak, because I believe we have a few speakers.
Yeah.
Should we start with?
First speaker, Wishner.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I've been a poll worker for about
I'm sorry, Mr. Wishner?
Wishner, W-I-S-H-N-E-R.
Okay, if you're here for any particular organization, if you can identify.
No, just as a dedicated poll worker
Yes.
who's always enjoyed doing the job because it's a responsible position and it's part of the public trust. So I think we can all agree on that. Commissioner, with regard to the measures that you're taking, and I'll intrude on my own time with this, my perception is, and I realize that you may be looking at it differently, is that you're still putting the burden of proof as to eligibility on the back of the voter, that he must respond to one mailing or another. When in fact I think the fair, more reasonable approach might be to prove that he should not be on that list in the first place. Again, that's just my view.
What I'm saying is our preliminary analysis is that we believe that with respect to a certain number of voters, that the proper process was not followed internally. To the extent that we can identify that the proper process was not followed internally, which is a combination of commissioner procedures and policies and the New York State election law. If we didn't do those things, we'll be able to identify those folks that whose votes were improperly put on the...
I understand all of that.
So now, but here's the other problem. We have to follow New York State election law, Section 5-400.
And it's a time constraint.
And Section 5-402. Now, Section 5-400 says that the New York State Board of Elections, that any Board of Elections shall remove someone from the voter rolls who has died, who has committed a felony that would be excluding them from eligibility, if they were declared incompetent by a court of competent jurisdiction, if that's not a lawyer's statement for you, right? And as well, if you've moved, which we have a process for that through the post office, right? Then, in addition, if you refer back to 5-213, and I know all of this is technical, if we get a piece of mail returned back from you that says that you're no longer at a particular address, that's the cumbersome process that I was telling you about. So if we have reason to believe that you moved because we get something back that says addressee unknown, or move left no forwarding address, then we're supposed to send out the confirmation notice to you. If you don't respond to the confirmation notice, you remain on the inactive list, and if you fail to vote in 2 successive federal elections, then we take the extra step of sending you an intent to cancel notice, and if you don't respond to the intent to cancel notice, then we take the other extra step of sending you a cancellation notice, giving you multiple bites at the apple. The problem that we have, and this is not just the New York City Board of Elections, the Presidential Commission report from 2014, January of 2014, has indicated, and it was surprising to me at the time, that a full 40% of the residents of the United States change their address in a given calendar year, which then is deemed to be higher in urban settings such as New York. So when we send out mail, if it comes back, we have a responsibility to keep and maintain the voter rolls, not only because we should do it and we want to do it, but because the state law requires us to do it. So that's, I don't want, it's very hyper-technical, I get it, but I don't think under those circumstances, if you move and you don't tell us where you're going, that is an unnecessary shifting of the burden. Now, there is also a process in place for that. If you moved and you forgot to tell the Board of Elections, I don't know, because you're worried about moving bans and, you know, it's a big deal to move, you can show up at your new poll place. You can vote by affidavit. And if you were previously registered in Brooklyn and now you're living in Staten Island, your vote will count, because under Motor Voter and the MOVE Act, If we have you as properly registered where you were, and it was within the 5 boroughs of the city of New York, then your vote, your affidavit vote will count when the process works the way it's supposed to.
Excellent answer.
All right, thank you very much.
That's the good news. Now comes the bad news.
I know, I figured something else was coming.
Now, some have described this as the election from hell, and it may well have been. At least it was at my poll site. I'm not going to go
Which was where?
66 Frankfurt Street, which it happens to be the same location where Scott Stringer had his press conference.
Okay.
So it's just up the block at Southbridge Towers, right across from the seaport. Now, I've been a poll worker since 2001. I've never complained about a coordinator until now. And I've had good coordinators and bad coordinators.
Can we have this conversation between us?
No, that's why we're here.
Okay.
That's why we took off work today.
Then without
Listen.
mentioning names.
Well, yeah, because I don't
Okay.
want to disparage someone without having an opportunity to talk
Okay,
to the
then
public.
I will simply relate what happened.
Okay, fine.
Okay,
Thank
just
you. Thank you.
one incident out of several, but it was the big one. We had 3 scanners. All of them, mysteriously, almost simultaneously, broke down.
Oh.
Now, that's the good news. The bad news was the reaction of the coordinator, who had what I can best describe as a meltdown. She became panicked, hysterical, crying, had no idea that there was an alternative emergency ballot procedure. Opening up the top door of the scanner, flipping down the silver lid, inserting the ballots, counting them later. So simple. She wouldn't do any of that. Now, on the premises was a friend and neighbor who happens to be a member of Community Board 1. I told him of the emergency procedure, gave him the same once-over lightly that I just mentioned here now. He called the Board of Elections, spoke to somebody at the top, gave his phone to the coordinator, and she cried some more. Now, voters were told while the machines were broken down, you can't vote, you cannot vote your ballot until the repairman comes. She went over to the tables where I was sitting, told the poll workers, you are not to give out any new ballots until the repairman comes.
Okay. This is clearly details that we need. But we do have a large audience here today,
Okay.
and we'll get to you. And if you want to stay today and give us more details, and we can have a staff member meet with you and take all of the details that you need, and we'll look into that. But thank you very much for that insight.